Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Yang and the increased use of parasols. And we're going to look at that specifically from the perspective of two different elements, sacred versus secular, and protection, okay? All right, so I want to talk about the increase of use of parasols, right? So, first of all, let me define what a parasol is. So a parasol is... It's shaped exactly like it's exactly like an umbrella in every single way, except that it's not waterproof. Okay, so an umbrella is designed to protect you from water, right? Like water's falling from the sky, it's raining, and you put up an umbrella, and like this plasticky cloth tarp thing is there, or it's like a polyester blend, and it keeps you dry, right? Well, a parasol is exactly the same, except they're usually a little more ornate, and basically the material that they're made out of does not need to be water resistant, and it's actually not water resistant. An umbrella and a parasol are not the same thing, okay? And basically, a parasol is specifically for protecting you from the sun, okay? It's an umbrella for when it's not raining and what's coming down on you is the sun. Right? All right, so I have recently noticed a significant increase in the use of parasols. Now, I will explain where I've seen this, right? So, going about my daily routines, right? Twice a week, I'm in a position where I'm walking in an upper, kind of a rich area, right? And this is where I saw it, because, you know, where I live is not a rich area. It's not, well, it's not a rich area, right? And I did not see this around where I'll take walks, I'll take bicycle rides around where I live, and I was not seeing this there, right? But in this rich area where I am like twice a week, I will walk close to noon, right? And I'll take a walk which is about a half a mile, right? And on this walk, like over a month and a half, I was like, is that a parasol? Like on days when it was the hot sun was out, I would see people carrying parasols. Now, the first time I saw this, I was like, whoa, it's a parasol, right? Like, it just seemed odd to me, right? But I didn't think anything of it, right? Well, the next day, I saw another parasol, right? So I took notice, I'm like, who's carrying a parasol, right? So the first thing I was like, well, I think the person who's carrying this parasol is, maybe they're a Jane Austen fan. My wife has read every single Jane Austen novel like 10 times. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. My wife is a Jane Austen fan, right? Like, she loves Jane Austen, right? So parasols show up all the time in Jane Austen books. And I'm like, maybe there was a new Jane Austen book? Like, of course, Jane Austen died a long time ago, but there are still people who write in kind of her style and her voice. And I'm like, maybe Jane Austen's hot again? Like, I don't know, right? So I was watching it, and I was like, okay, that's just a Jane Austen thing, right? But I kept seeing this, and I was like, wait. That's a Tom Clancy fan over there, right? So at first I thought, okay, people carrying parasols are just Jane Austen fans. So that kind of makes sense. Parasols are in Jane Austen books, you know, it makes sense, right? But then I saw somebody who was clearly a Tom Clancy fan, right? Now, Jane Austen, that is like top hats, right? Tom Clancy is like laser sights, right? Jane Austen is about hunting a fiance, right? Tom Clancy books are about hunting submarines, right? So I saw a Tom Clancy fan carrying a parasol, right? And the Jane Austen's parasol, it was made out of silk and it had flowers on it. The Tom Clancy fan's parasol, not an umbrella. I wouldn't be talking to you today if this person would just use an umbrella as a parasol. This was a sheer black parasol, like a super dope Tom Clancy fan parasol. I was like, what the? Like, it shocked me. I was like, this is really strange, right? So I was careful. I watched this a few more weeks, and now at this point, I'm ready to talk to you about the increased use of parasols. I think, you know, about 2 or 3 years ago, I might have saw somebody using a parasol 1 in 100, right? Now it's like 1 in 30. I think that the increased use of parasol within the last 2 years has tripled, right? Based on my own metrics, right? So parasols are a thing now, right? And so what on earth does the increased use of parasols have to do with Andrew Yang? A lot. It's important that Andrew Yang pays attention to the increased use of parasol. Let's talk about sacred versus secular and protection, okay? All right, so how did we arrive here, right? Why are people using parasols, right? Now, first of all, this is coming from me, Scott Garibay, and the reason why is I would never in my life use a parasol, period, right? It would never even occur to me to use a parasol, right? It's the sun. Like, it's always there. Like, I'm not going to carry a device to protect myself from the sun. That seems absurd, right? To me, right? But I stopped and I thought about it. I'm like, why are these people using a parasol, right? And I'm gonna give you the answer. It has to do with sacred versus secular, okay? I am an evangelical Christian. We belong in the group of sacred. We worship a sacred thing, okay? Seculars are like, nope, I'm an agnostic or I'm an atheist. I do not acknowledge anything sacred, right? Like, there's nothing above me, or, you know, there's not some supernatural force that I owe obedience to, or that is going to save me at some point, right? That's secular, right? No God, right? And so, or they're like, maybe there's a God, I don't know, I don't need to pay attention to that. I don't need to follow a bunch of rules in a book, right? Secular, right? So here's the thing, right? Now, if I gather 20 American millennials, and I put them around me in a circle, and then I spin around and I blindfold myself, I spin around and I throw a rock, right? 20, 30 years ago, there was a good chance I was going to hit a sacred American millennial, right? Well, I know actually 20, 30 years ago, millennials were around. But you get my point. Young people, right? But nowadays, if I spin around and I throw a rock at that circle of American millennials around me, I'm very likely to hit a secular, right? In fact, the secular group is growing far faster than the sacred group, right? It's not, you know, being an evangelical Christian, believing in a God, following rules in a book. None of that's cool anymore. Like, that is not cool anymore. Like, it's definitely like, oh, that's for old people. Oh, that's for squares. Oh, that's for, like, you know, it's not cool, right? And it's not growing. Seculars are growing, right? So what is growing with secularism, right? Well, guess what? Self-care. I recently read an article about self-care, and they talked about a massive growth in the self-care industry, not self-help. Self-help, the word self-help is self-help books and self-help programs. They are massively reducing, and it's shifting to self-care, right? Now, why would self-care be on the rise? Well, self-care, this is purely my theory. I think self-care is an inversion of religion, right? It's essentially a new religion for the non-religious. And it makes perfect sense, right? So basically, here's the issue, right? And get this. Parasols are self-care, right? Used by seculars, not used by people who are down with the sacred, right? Not used by evangelical Christians. By the way, I understand that evangelical Christian is a subset of the sacred, right? So I'm really talking about evangelical Christians, but I'm going to use the term sacred here and as well. And broadly, it applies, okay? So basically, you have this situation with the sacred, right? So I'm down with the sacred. I'm an evangelical Christian, right? One of the reasons why I don't care about parasols is, like, so somebody who's using a parasol, they don't want the sun to hit them, right? And give them cancer, right? I don't care if I get cancer, right? Like, I don't need to. And the reason why is I know where I'm going when I die. I'm going, like, this 75 years, it's great. I love it. It's fantastic. This is going to be, like, the worst, like, this is going to be the worst experience. This 75 years is a dot on the beginning of my eternal line, right? And my eternity is going to be 1,000 times better than anything I've ever experienced in this life. Right? I don't need to grasp for every single year, you know, for an extra year, right? Because I know where I'm going. I'm going to heaven. I'm going to be with Jesus Christ. I'm going to live with God, not based on a single thing I've ever done, but just on the fact that I accepted salvation from Jesus Christ, and His blood covers me. And when God will look at me at the judgment time, He'll only see Christ's blood, right? Christ's righteousness, right? So basically, I don't care about parasols. Like, bring cancer on, whatever, right? It's no big deal to me, right? But if I'm a secular, whoo, boy, you better whip out that parasol, right? Because, get this, they don't know, right? Like, they either don't know or they do know. And let's talk about the don't know. If you don't know where you're going when you die, you don't want to get there. Like, nobody wants to go to an unknown destination. That ain't fun, right? Like, you're like, oh boy, what's going to happen? You're like, that's not cool, right? So agnostics, like, you could bet agnostics need parasols, right? Like, they do not need to get cancer because they have no idea where they're going, right? Now, atheists, right? They definitely need parasols too. They're like, hey, this 75 years on this planet, that's it. Oh, I want to make that 85 or 90. Absolutely. Because, frankly, I don't want to not exist, right? And if this is all the existence I get, whoo, boy, get that parasol, right? Like, so that's the issue, right? So basically, we're seeing an increased use in parasols because the secular is winning over the sacred. There are more seculars than there are sacreds, right? So, and seculars need parasols, right? So if you have more seculars, you have more parasols, right? Now, this is critical for Andrew Yang to understand. So here's the issue. Overall, Democrats, by and large, okay, are on the secular side and not on the sacred side. That's not me, Scott Garibay, saying that. That's Pete Buttigieg saying that. He actually said in one of the debates, hey, we need to take the religious space back. We Democrats should be talking about religion. And boy, when he said this to his fellow Democrats, it was crickets. You could hear a pin drop, right? Nobody was picking up with him. They're like, hey, dude, we're all secular. We know you, Pete Buttigieg, is super religious, but not us, right? Like, so, you know, like, among the Democrats, you're more likely to run into seculars, right? So what should Andrew Yang do based on this parasol change, right? So one of the things he should do is, during the primaries where he's talking to seculars and he needs to win over Democrats to beat the other Democrats, he should really have this I fear death demeanor, right? Talk about his fear of death, because he, to make himself more sympathetic to seculars who do fear death. And well, they should, right? They either don't know or they're getting nothing on the other side. Neither one of those situations is good, right? Then, as soon as we go into the general, right, once Andrew Yang has defeated every single Democrat, then he needs to shift over. He can't do this right away. It's got to be staged out over weeks. He needs to shift over to a I do not fear death, right? And he needs to make himself sympathetic to evangelical Christians and to sacreds. And the reason why is, once he gets into the general, it's all about stealing votes from Trump, right? Andrew Yang, once we get into the general, has to do nothing to rally the base. Nothing to rally the base. Nothing to rally the base. This has got to be understood, right? The job of rallying Democrat voters is already taken. It is Donald Trump's main job. He terrifies Democrats every single day, and no thinking Democrat will possibly remain away from the polls in 2020, because every day Donald Trump kicks them in the teeth and said, you better make it to the polls. I am rallying you. Like, Andrew Yang is not going to rally Democrats. Trump is rallying Democrats. Trump's going to make sure that the Democrats show up at the polls, right? And so, basically, Andrew Yang needs to make sure that he is taking votes from Trump to get that 2-for-1 swing, right? And so, right now, Andrew Yang needs to be rejecting, I fear death. Ooh, I really don't want to know what's on the other side of the veil, right? And then as soon as we go into the general, over like 4 to 8 weeks, you just shift into that, I don't care about death. I'm like you, evangelical. I'm like you, sacred. Yeah, bring death on. I don't care about cancer, right? Like, I don't need to, right? I know where I'm going. Actually, yeah. So, and to get those sympathy votes, to put himself in a position to win those, okay? So that is the sacred versus the secular. Let's talk about protection, right? Woo, boy. I have been thinking a lot about cell phones, mobiles, okay? When I say mobile, I mean cell phone. Mobiles have truly transformed our lives. And one of the things that people aren't really talking about, there's all this, complaints about Facebook, complaints about mobile apps, blah, 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 right? Cellular phones, mobiles, have made our lives dramatically safer. Dramatically safer, right? The reality is, violent crime is going down across the board, right? It's going way, way, way down, right? And the reason why is everybody's realizing crime never paid. It was always hard to get away with crime, right? But now it's virtually impossible, right? Everybody and his brother, everybody and her sister has a mobile on them now. there are cameras everywhere. If you do something wrong, you are likely to be caught on a still camera that's right in the corner of the room or on a street lamp post. Or if either one of those don't get you, you're going to get caught on camera by somebody who just has their cell phone, which is every person on the planet now, right? Like, so it's almost impossible to do crimes because there are no dark areas. There are no areas that are not covered, right? And so if you do one crime, you're going to get caught, right? Because there's a record of it. It's like, catching criminals is easier than it's ever been, right? In addition to that, right? Like things like serial killers, right? Serial killers put up pathetic numbers today. They used to be able to just just lay bodies across America, right? Now serial killers are lucky to get 5, 10 people, right, before they get caught, because there are cameras everywhere, right? So our world has become massively safe, right? We still got some outlier issues. People come, like, there's some bad situations that happen about every 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's the same situation, but the numbers are incredibly low on those, right? It's really, and you wouldn't know it from listening to the media, but overall, death from violent crime is just ridiculously lower than it used to be, right? Serial killers are pretty much done. Like, that profession is almost finished, right? There's no ability to do anything significant there anymore, which, thank goodness. Like, that's a good thing. We don't really, nobody wants that to be that to be an easy thing, right? All right, so, with all that said, we have this issue where we now are so protected from things that used to be quite dangerous, right? That really, it brings up the question, especially in the 2020 election, of who should be protected, right? And that's what parasols are. Parasols are protection, right? And people are saying, hey, I'm going for a stroll under the sun. I need protection. This is new. Can you imagine this? People are like, oh my goodness, I'm going for a stroll under the sun. I need protection. That seems crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. I'm like, what? You need protection because you're going for a stroll under the sun? Right? Like, it just seems outrageous, like, to me, right? But I now understand, right? So I've been paying attention, and I've been paying attention to, I've been paying very close attention specifically to all the Democrats, right? And Bernie Sanders has taught me the Democrat definition of people who need protection. Here's Bernie Sanders' definition of somebody who needs protection. I'm going to do my Bernie impression now. Okay, if you... That's pretty bad. I'll just shift back into my old normal voice. Attempt failed, right? Like, all right, hey, I'm Bernie. Here's what Bernie's saying. Well, I'm a young person, and I have just decided to go to Harvard. The tuition for Harvard right now is $65,000 a year. I got no aid, no grants, no government loans. I now have completed my 4-year Harvard degree, right? That my debt at this point is, at $65,000, is $270,000. And all I got in return is the ability to be hired in almost any company immediately. And also get signing bonuses and be able to walk in as let's say so now I could be hired almost anywhere, right? But I have $270,000 in debt. Now, according to Bernie Sanders, Bernie's is like, this person needs protection. That, Harvard tricked them into giving them $270,000. And now all they can do is get a high-paying job at virtually any firm they try to get a job at. That's all they got. And this person needs government protection. We need to give them college debt, we need to give them college debt relief. They should not pay a single dime of that $270,000. This poor person who was duped into getting this 4-year Harvard degree, who now owes $270,000, needs government protection. For every dollar that they spent, it should be given back to them. This person needs protection, government protection, right? Now, when I look at that, I'm like, that's crazy, right? If I'm a person who just spent $270,000 on a Harvard degree, right? And that's exactly what it costs. I looked it up, right? And, I don't need help, right? But Bernie's like, no. We're redefining who needs protection, right? If you were duped into getting a Harvard degree and now you have $270,000, it might take you 2 years to make that $270,000 back. You could be paying that debt back for 10 or 15 years. And yes, if you are a Harvard graduate, you will probably make $270,000 as a bonus one of your years, right? But you still need protection, exactly like someone needs a parasol. What? Like, that's the issue. We now live in a culture and a society that is so safe that we're breaking out the parasols. A stroll in the sun is a threat to us. Exactly the same way Bernie Sanders has defined that people who spend $270,000 to get a 4-year degree to Harvard need government protection. They need college debt relief. Both these things seem outrageously ridiculous to me, right? But Andrew Yang needs to realize this is where we're at. This is what people want. They don't want the sun to hit them. They don't want an increased capacity to get cancer, right? And the reality is they also don't want to have to pay back $270,000 when they finish their Harvard degree, because there's some risk there. There's a tiny bit of risk, just like the sun coming down on you when you stroll in the sun. A tiny bit of risk. And so that's where we're at. We've arrived to where the definition of who needs protection has been completely transformed. Right? And I think Andrew Yang needs to understand this. And then he needs to, be very careful as he wraps speech around these issues. Right? So I think there's a lot to unpack here. And I think Andrew Yang should think very carefully about what the increased use of parasols mean. All that's my opinion. What about you? I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Do you use a parasol? Why? Right? I'd love to hear that in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.